Hello and welcome to CYC News for the 21st of June 2020 and the 14th of Bauna 1736. I'm Andrew Nara, and in today's headlines, a controversial magazine cover wrongfully published featuring a Coptic Orthodox Bishop. New US sanctions target Assad government's foreign backers. California utility PG&E pleads guilty to 84 wildfire fatalities. Israel's West Bank seizure plan condemned by UN experts. Facebook will let users switch off political adverts. Dexamethasone proves a first life-saving COVID-19 drug. And the Premier League returns. But first to Egypt, where on Saturday, June 13th, Arabic state-owned political magazine Rose Al-Yusuf published an issue with a photo of H.D. Bishop Raphael, General Bishop of downtown Cairo, on its cover stating that he is a traitor to his country. Next to him on the cover is Mohammed Beatty, former supreme guide of the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood terrorist group. In response, the Coptic Orthodox Church, following the guidance of His Holiness Pope Tawadros II, released a statement strongly condemning this overreach. The statement said, "The Church considers this act one that is not a show of freedom but of expression, but extreme defamation and abuse that must not be ignored by the authority responsible for this magazine, considering that such unchecked acts will harm social peace in a time in which cooperation and unity are needed in light of the current situation." In response, the cover of the magazine was changed to exclude H.D. Bishop Raphael's photo. The National Press Authority also offered an apology to the Church and asked the magazine to offer an apology for this defamation in light of the good relations between the authority, the press and the media with Pope Tawadros and the Copts. This was in order to preserve the long history of the magazine in defending issues of national unity and keeping its pages, heart and mind open to fellow citizens since its inception. The editor-in-chief of the magazine has been referred for an investigation, and the journalist responsible for covering the Coptic Christian News section has been suspended until investigations are completed. Over to Syria now, where tough new economic sanctions aimed at deterring foreign business activity with the country's government have been imposed by the United States. The measures in the Seizure Act seem to compel the government to halt its murderous acts on civilians and accept a peaceful political transition. But there are fears that the sanctions will make the plight of ordinary Syrians even more desperate. The war-torn country is grappling with a worsening economic crisis. Its currency has plummeted and the value in the black market, sending prices of food and medicine soaring and prompting rare protests against President Bashar al-Assad in government-controlled areas. More than 380,000 people have been killed and 11 million others have been displaced since an uprising against Mr. Assad began in 2011. Government forces have regained control of most of the country with the help of Russia's military and Iran-backed militiamen. However, rebels supported by Turkey and jihadists still hold areas in northwest, while Kurdish-led fighters backed by the US control part of the northeast. To the United States now, and the California utility has pleaded guilty to the deaths of 84 people in a wildfire northeast of San Francisco, the deadliest US corporate crime ever successfully prosecuted. Pacific Gas and Electric admitted the 2018 Camp Fire, the state's deadliest and most destructive, was caused by faulty equipment. In a court hearing, a judge read the name of each victim aloud to the company chief executive. The company will be fined millions of dollars, but nobody will go to jail. Many of the camp's fire victims were elderly or disabled. A number of them were found in burnt-out cars, killed out as they attempted to flee the blaze with other family and neighbors. Others were discovered in and around their homes. In Butte County Superior Court on Tuesday, an image of each victim was displayed on the screen as PG&E's chief executive Bill Johnson pleaded to every single count of involuntary manslaughter, responding 84 times, "Guilty, Your Honor." In an acknowledgement of criminal wrongdoing, Mr. Johnson apologized to the family, saying, "I've heard the pain and anguish. No words from me can ever reduce the magnitude of that devastation. We know that we cannot replace all that the fire has destroyed." The largest publicly held utility in the US, PG&E, has to pay a maximum fine of $3.5 million and cover the cost of $500,000 for the investigation. The utility has already committed to settle claims from insurers and local government agencies for more than $25 billion, including a $13.5 billion settlement with fire victims. Over to the West Bank now, and almost 50 United Nations human rights experts have condemned Israel's plan to annex parts of the occupied territory, calling it a vision of the 21st century apartheid. They warned such a move would violate international law and leave what would amount to a Palestinian Bantustan. The 47 experts who are appointed by the UN Human Rights Council said the annexation of the occupied territory is a serious violation of the Charter of the United Nations and the Geneva Conventions, and contrary to the fundamental rule affirmed many times by the United Nations Security Council and the General Assembly that the acquisition of territory by war or force is inadmissible. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says in July he may start the process of applying Israeli sovereignty to Jewish settlements and the Jordan Valley. Such a move was effectively green-lighted by Donald Trump's peace plan. Mr. Trump's vision for peace, released in January, also envisages a Palestinian state in the remaining 70% of the West Bank, all of Gaza, and with its capital in the fringes of East Jerusalem. The Palestinians who claim all of the West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem have dismissed the plan as biased towards Israel and a denial of their rights. Israel has occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem since the 1967 Middle East War. It pulled its troops and settlers out of Gaza in 2005, but the UN says its occupation there has not ended. Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg says users will be able to turn off political adverts on the social network in the run-up to the 2020 US election. In a piece written for USA Today newspaper, he also says he hopes to help 4 million Americans sign up as new voters. Facebook has faced heavy criticism for allowing adverts from politicians that contain false information. Rival social platform Twitter banned political advertising last October. Mark Zuckerberg wrote, "For those of you who've already made up your minds and just want the election to be over, we hear you. So we're also introducing the ability to turn off seeing political ads." Facebook and its subsidiary Instagram will give users the option to turn off political adverts when they appear, or they can block them in the settings. The feature will start rolling out to users on Wednesday. The company said it plans to make the feature available to all US users over the next few weeks and will offer it in other countries this autumn. Mr. Zuckerberg went on to encourage people who aren't signed up as voters to register in a time for the US elections for November. He said, "Voting is voice. Its single most powerful expression of democracy, the best way to hold our leaders accountable, and how we address many of the issues our country is grappling with." Facebook estimates that the hub will reach 160 million Americans by the election in November. To some health news, and the cheap and widely available drug has now been found to save lives of seriously ill coronavirus patients. UK experts believe that the low-dose steroid treatment, Dexamethasone, is a major breakthrough in the fight against the deadly virus. The drug is part of the world's biggest trial testing existing treatments to see if they also work for coronavirus. It cut the risk of death by a third for ventilator patients. For those on oxygen, it cut deaths by a fifth. Researchers say that if the drug has been used to treat patients in the UK from the start of the pandemic, up to 5,000 lives could have been saved. And it could be of huge benefit in poorer countries with high numbers of COVID-19 patients. The UK government has 200,000 courses of the drug in its stockpile and says the NHS will make dexamethasone available to patients. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said, "I am proud of these British scientists who have led the first robust clinical trial anywhere in the world to find the coronavirus treatment proven to reduce the risk of death. I'm very grateful to the thousands of patients in this country who have volunteered for the trials. Thank you." The drug is already used to reduce inflammation in a range of other conditions, including arthritis, asthma, and some skin conditions, and will now be available across the NHS, with enough supply in the event of a second peak. After a 3-month absence because of the coronavirus pandemic, the Premier League returned on Wednesday night, and with Aston Villa against Sheffield United kicking off the English top flight's resumption. In the first of 92 league games that will be packed into a frantic 40 days before the season concludes on the 26th of July. Fixtures will be played behind closed doors as one of the host of measures to prevent any further cases of the virus. A minute's silence to remember those who have died from coronavirus will be held before the first matches, while heart-shaped badges in a tribute to the frontline NHS staff will also be worn on kits. For the first 12 matches of the restarted campaign, all player names on the back of jerseys will be replaced by Black Lives Matter. Over 8 rounds of the twice-weekly coronavirus screenings of Premier League players and staff, there have been 16 positive results from 8,687 tests. Liverpool sit 25 points clear at the top of the table, while Bournemouth, Aston Villa and Norwich City are in the relegation zone. The Reds, chasing a first league title in 30 years, require 2 more victories from the remaining matches to secure the trophy. And that's all from CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Andrew Nada, and from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, see you next time.